I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated.
You just sparked a memory here. Tennille is the one that broke the ice with the book Loving What Is. Yes. Because initially when you guys started dating, I'll never forget the day.
None of us will.
But you reflect, because I've learned so much from you guys over the years, and you reflect back on. I reflect back on it, and I think we've spoken about this, but I think there was a jealousy factor because Tennille and I were friends prior to you guys dating, and then you guys started dating, and I think I was just jealous because I was jealous at the time that she picked you. And then that ruined our friendship because it was like, not the whole bro code thing, but you guys got together. And I was jealous for many, many years. I'm not anymore because I know the meaning behind jealousy and envy. You guys really are incredible together. Like, you really are. And Tennille is the one, because I know the conflict it caused you at the hockey games, and we would parent-teacher meetings, and Tennille would come to the parent-teacher meetings, and I was uncomfortable with that, but I didn't say anything because we're adults. You don't have to sit here and bash each other. That's what I can say to the listeners. And Tennille is the one that I think you just brought it to my house. I think that the book was left at my door or something.
I think how it went is, I was at a pretty bad place, and had done. We were separated at the time, and it was a very deep reflection time, and some of that, had honestly had to do with co-parenting and being part of Spencer's life and imparting on him, some of my rules and the way in my head I might have thought I was doing the best thing, but it was causing tension in our relationship in terms of Spencer and I, because I was so academically driven. I had so many rules about how you should make your bed and clean your room and do all that. And it was like, just, he's a young boy, and I'd never had a young boy in my life. I had no idea what I was doing. I was riding on whatever instinct I had, not having had birth to, he's the greatest gift in my life. He's taught me more than anybody. I'm going to get teary-eyed. But at that point, I reached a point that it was like, if I fucked up my relationship, that's on me. I'll own that. There is no reason I need to fuck up my relationship with Spencer, and there's no reason that I can't repair the relationship with you, or at least own it and say, I have stood on the other side of a hockey arena. I have done all of those things.
We've never talked about this before.
Never. I have done all of those things because I made it about me.
Thank you. Woo.
I think that, I kind of obviously rolled through a lot of those thoughts because, like you said, we've done such a great job at putting it in the past that it's not where I live.
Exactly.
So I had to actually go like, what took me to that day? And I think I was like, I just done so much reflection. And I was like, I'm making this all about me and my rules and how I grew up and what I think is right. And whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. Like what is, one of our mentors has that saying, and it kept replaying, is like, you can be right or you can be rich, but you can't be both. And that's not rich financially. It could be, but rich in your relationships. Like, do I want to go to my grave saying that I was right about this and that, I was right about the relationship and I was right about you making your bed or doing your homework or all of those things, or that I had this amazing relationship? And from that, I think I was reading that book, and I got you a copy. I dropped it off at your door, and I said, "Look," and I'm sure the text was one that Dwayne would hate because it was probably 6 pages long. And I said, "This is my thought process, and I've dropped this book off. And if you throw it out, I totally understand. This is where I'm at." And I said, I apologize for all of those times, and I hope that what we had before is something that we can have now. And also at that point, it was also like our relationship was dissolving. And I think in that moment, I also took it outside myself and went, holy shit, this is how she felt. This is the pain she was in. And I didn't see that. I made it about, oh, it's disrespectful to do that. And, your marriage ended X amount of time. That didn't mean that the pain ended. It just meant that there was a date stamp on a lawyer's document. And I had not put myself in the other person's shoes. And truthfully, I don't think enough women or men necessarily put themselves in the other person's shoes for a minute and go, if it wasn't about me, if it was about them, if it's about where they're coming from, and that it's not them trying to hurt me, it's what they're dealing with in themselves, or where they're coming from, or their past experiences and how that's played out for them, I think there would be a lot more relationships that are a version of ours, that it's not full of the side comments, the little negative looks, the two women that can't be in the same room as each other, or on the other side, men trying to keep the two women apart because they don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
And that's a thing. Like I see that play out all the time where it's like, well, I don't want my ex-wife to tell them all the bad things about me. My thought process on that, because I was courtside for the divorce, is I think we don't give each other enough credit for making the best decision for us. We all have a different set of rules and beliefs and vision for the future. And whether it's painful or not, or in the moment you can or can't, eventually you can see whether someone is a fit for someone else. And if they're potentially a better fit, or they fulfill a void that you have not yet developed in yourself, or it's just not something you're interested in doing. There are people that do want to dive into the books and do the courses together and work on those things. And there's people that aren't, and that's okay. And, it comes down to mate selection and whether that's accurate. But I think when it gets into co-parenting, there's a lot of trying to keep everyone separate, trying to not talk about it, trying to keep all the pain pushed away and keep everyone in their corners so that you can kind of do the pickups and the drop-offs and the school meetings and things like that, and try and avoid a fight, where it's like there's also a part of just owning your role in it and making it about serving the other people. And I'm sure I know there's times that we haven't all agreed on what the best course of action is for the situation, and we exercise some flexibility. It's not my way or the highway.
And I think there has to be a level of trust. And perhaps it took us a while to get to that level of trust. I think of was it the Gladiator course that Spencer did with Tim? And I, once again, remember calling, and because Spencer called Mom and Spencer was struggling, and Mom's a big softie. And what did Mom do? Mom called Tennille, and I lost it on Tennille. And we can laugh about it now, but I guess at that point, I didn't have that level of trust in you guys that you're not about to send our son off to something that's going to be hurtful or detrimental. And I know that now. And he came out a better person for doing the course, and he was unbelievably proud of himself. But I think trust is a very, very important word as well.
I think that's one of the things that we had is, and it's, I think it's interesting that you brought it up, because I think there's a lot of fear amongst women that there's very few trustworthy women that you create your inner circle with. And part of our difficulty and part of the beauty of where we are now is I think we were already on our inner circle. That made the pain more severe when we got in a relationship because I broke the inner circle and I had to own that. And I think, from my standpoint, it's interesting because when I reflected on that, from the day that we kind of started to mend the fences, it mended very quickly because there was a trust factor of, okay, I know you. I know you're a beautiful soul. I know that you lead with your heart. You're a big ball of mush and you love everyone and you want nothing more than what's best for your son. And there was never a fear factor of, what's going to happen if I open up. My worst case scenario was you're like, look, I'm not open to this. Okay. At least I can say that I tried and I try again
Yeah.
in time because time does heal. But I don't think that there's a lot of trust in female circles for what other people's intent is and what other people's, whether they have your heart in their mind, but, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but if they have your best interests in their hearts. And I think that as I look around and I think of where we were in high school and the large groups of circles that you would, potentially hang out with. And now as you get older and you mature, you keep and cherish those relationships very, very close. We're super lucky. And I think that the ability for us to have as tight a family as we do and share holidays and we text each other all the time. We go shopping together. Like people don't think it's real. It's real. I promise you, it's legit. Hey, what are you wearing for the podcast today?
Exactly.
Like, okay, sounds good. But I think that's a huge factor is trust. And I don't know. I guess flip that over to Dwayne in terms of from the other side is how do you take two people who have not known each other because we did know each other, and how do you allow them to build some trust in each other that the new girlfriend is always going to look like a threat? Because from a female's perspective, a new girlfriend is always going to be, well, is she prettier? Is she smarter? Is she more connected? Like, what does she have? Is she younger? What does she have that I don't have? What is the failure in myself that he sees in her? There will always be that. I think that's hardwired into us to make that scan and that analysis. And then I think, from the other side, from a girlfriend's perspective at that time, you're also going, okay, she's going to hate me. She's not going to want me to spend time with the son, the daughter, the ex-husband. I have no idea what to do in this situation. If you've not had kids and now all of a sudden you're being put into a relationship with kids, you're going, I'm getting everything thrown at me. I'm trying to balance what both their parenting styles are. They're probably not completely aligned because even if you were in a joint marriage, you're probably not completely aligned on
It's true. Yeah.
how you're going to parent every single situation. And at the same time, it's like, hey, does she want him back? Is she going to push me out so that she can open the door and tell him all the things that are wrong with me so that she can come back into the relationship? Like, what are her intentions? Is it to most of these thought processes I think are pretty common in the women that I've
That's
talked
true.
to.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
don't think it's unique to just me. Maybe it is, but I think that, it's that fear is so prominent within us. And whether that's the hunter-gatherer, kind of information that we've already talked about, but it's like, okay, what's safe, what's not safe, who is safe, who is not safe, what could happen to me if I open myself up here, how much hurt could be bestowed on me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question the studies will show that, like, for millennium, we have our brains are programmed to see all the problems, and that is part of, the core issue that many people have is they don't realize that, like, the brain is programmed to see what's wrong, what the problems are around us, because it's the protective mechanism that we've created over thousands of millions of years. Um, And so in order to be able to get through that, the fear part of it, you've got to be able to acknowledge or identify that, hey, this is something that's not me. This is just humanity. And so, how do I overcome that? What's my strategy? What are the questions I ask myself? There's lots of things that we've talked about on the podcast to overcoming fear, but ultimately it is. And I think you asked a unbelievably beautiful question. I didn't write it down. I'm kind of mad at myself for not writing it down, but you were talking about if you were, the other person, and you said, like, if this wasn't about me, how would I look at it, or how would I approach it, or how would I see it? And I think that's a huge, huge question, and an answer to basically your question there, which is, if we just came at it, what I mean, you guys never got along. Like there's, I mean, it was what? I don't know how many years it was that
I have no idea.
I don't even remember.
Had
Yeah.
to be 3 or 4, anyways, or 2 or 3.
I think it would probably be 3, 4.
Well,
Maybe even pushing 5.
you guys were both at my house. You helped me move in, I
Yeah.
think.
I did.
And then you showed up with a case of beer or something like that.
Sounds like something I would do.
So that's to put a time frame on it, that's about 18 years ago. And Spencer was 4 when you guys started dating?
So that was dating. Yeah, we'd have been dating in there. But then, but you guys didn't get along back then. So maybe we weren't dating. Maybe we were friends. I don't know.
No, we were friends at that point when
Yeah.
Terri moved in.
Yeah. But I think, like, to the point of the conversation is, you guys got together, and whether it's, and just for the listeners' purposes, yes, you did hear it right. Tennille and I were separated. So when I tell you I've made every mistake there is possible in relationships, yes, I have. And I have a daughter from another relationship, and her name's Savannah. And I mean, she's just a wonderful and beautiful young lady. And her mom has done such an amazing job at raising her, like raising a strong and willful and, beautiful character of a young woman. And, we don't have the relationship. I don't want to, it's not it's not a slight on her. It's not a slight on me. I think, if I am reflecting on this conversation, we probably didn't have the vision. We didn't have a combined vision of what we wanted to do. And I think that's probably at its core might be a miss. I'd have to, have a conversation with her about that, but we've never had that conversation. But I mean, she's done an amazing job with Savannah, and got lots of love for her and appreciation for everything that she's done. But I mean, I also was reflecting too on something earlier you said, Tennille, which was, one of the things that impacted our relationship when we got separated was our ability to, like, understand how we wanted to co-parent. And I'll say it probably more succinctly, which is I was not happy with what was happening there. Again, not probably as equipped as I am today, back then, to be able to communicate that as effectively. But I think, when I look at it and I go, well, what we did really, really well in our marriage was we created a vision for what we wanted our marriage to be. We didn't create a vision for what we wanted our co-parenting to be, which was, I had the, and I'm just reflecting on this now, but it's like I had the vision with Terri, but I don't think we had our own vision necessarily when I reflect back on it. And so I would just say, like, for the audience listening, for myself, it's like, the importance of having the vision, because when hell goes, to a handbasket, or whatever that saying is, it's the vision that is going to guide you through. You're going to have issues 6 months, 1 year, 1 week, whatever, but it's the long-term vision that keeps you committed to the game, or to the process, or to the event, or to the situation, to the marriage, to the business, to the whatever it is. it's that vision keeps your long-term commitment to it if you keep it in sight and it's unified. So I think that's, probably in its core, when you start to think about, not that this is relationship advice, or it's not relationship, it's divorce advice. but in this situation where you have, even the pull away from, the intimate relationship and the divorce, it's like, okay, what's the next step? What's your vision for what is to come? And sit down and agree upon that. And when you agree upon the vision, yes, along the way, are you going to be pissed off, frustrated at a decision that, a parent is going to make? 100%. Like, there was a lot of times where, I'm sure I did things where you're like, what the fuck is he doing? Or you did things where I'm like, are you serious? Like, but you're going to have that in a marriage, raising kids. So don't think that's just a divorce thing. That happens inside. So I think, the other part where you'd kind of ask the question of about the relationships and is the story, like being, the story that we fall into is the killer. And that was, I think, one of the things that probably saved the three of us, and I'll add Neil as well, the four of us, is that, we don't fall into a lot of story. You may temporarily fall into a story, like even that time when, when Spencer went down to that gladiator course, he was 18 at the time. I think, wasn't he? I think he was 18.
It's after
So it's only 4.5 years ago, 4 or 5, probably 4 years ago. But, and we had a really substantial, sustainable relationship between us all, at that time. And so, when you really look at it and you go, do you have a story of trust, or do you have a story of untrust? And what is driving that story? And, at the end of the day, in order to build trust, you kind of have to have three fundamental things. The first one's a level of integrity. You have to really believe that the person that you're dealing with and working with or focusing with or involved in the process with is that they have, a level of integrity. And the second piece is that they have some capability. So if it's a co-parenting vision, it's like, do they have the capability of co-parenting? And they may not be 100%, but that's all part of the vision too, right? So the part of the vision is, hey, how do we improve at co-parenting? So, I know that we've read the same books. You've said, hey, I'm reading this book on, parenting. It's like, okay, what's the book? I better read it because like it's it's our kid we're talking about. So hell yeah, I'm going to read it. And then, that perpetuates, a theme. So you tell me you're reading a book and then I'm like, oh, okay, so I read the book. That's a great book. Now I'm looking for a book. Hey, I'm reading this book. Great. And then, so you're raising your level of capability. And then at the end of the day, results are an example of performance. And so, that really follows up trust. So you're looking for integrity, capability, and results. And not just results on say, the kid is a good kid, like, cause that stuff you can't necessarily, that's not within your control. But what is in your control is how you show up, the result of how you show up. That's a result. To me, it's probably one of the most important results. It's like, you guess you'll remember the night we caught our kids smoking weed in the basement of your house. And, it was like, I mean, not to get into the details of the story, but, the ladies were whipping shit at the kids.
But we were very aligned.
Neil and I were, oh my God, how do we solve this? Anyways, it was a pretty funny night, I think, but it was a cool night too, because it was, we really united on it, but we, there was a result there. We showed up, like you picked up the phone. You're like, your son, you Get down here, or whatever.
In the car we
whatever
go.
the hell it was.
All
It
of a
was
sudden,
like,
he's your
all
child.
right, we're going. Yeah, exactly. It's my son now. But I think to me that's a result. Like, how do you show up? And it's like, I'll even say this because I was going to make the point earlier because it kind of tweaked in my brain, but as an extension of like, how do I love, honor, and obey, you in a post-intimate relationship, part of that was, I found it easier. Like, we have conversations and I can just listen to you. And I don't, it's like, feel like I'm in the perfect situation to be present for you in a conversation because I'm not coming home for dinner or I'm not having to crawl in between the sheets with you. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Because we're friends.
So yeah, but I can listen and I want to listen because I want you to be in a good place because, I care about you and it's also self-serving a little bit. You're the mother of my son. And so, so it's easy for me to show up. Whereas, people tell a story that, she's just being needy or she's just being whatever, emotional or whatever. It's like, no, those are the opportunities where you get the opportunity to show up and you're producing a result.
But there's a genuineness behind it. I genuinely feel you care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I know you do. And I do.
Yes.
And I'm not,
I know you
none
do.
of this is made up. But I think it's also like the, Gottman, I forget what his first name is. Charles, anyways, doesn't matter. Famous relationship author. But they talk, there's always a ratio, like what's the ratio of, positive, we call the love bank, you're depositing into a love bank. So Gottman, who talks about this ratio, and there's many different stats, but whether it's a 20-1 ratio of, making a deposit in the love bank, versus a withdrawal. And oftentimes our withdrawals are much bigger than the deposits. So you've got to make sure that you're in a positive, just like your bank account. You're going to have to cash a check one of these days. So you need to, be purposeful at putting in these deposits into your love bank, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your employees, whether it's with your, significant others, or, people in your relationship, in your life that have, are divorcees. And so, the minute that you get into this story that, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. And, like I've had conversations with guys that, wealthy guys that are paying a lot of money. And they struggle with it because, all of a sudden the wife that worked doesn't work anymore or whatever the story is. Like there's a million stories, but, it's like, I mean, you cut the deal. That's the deal you made. So, you can't change the past. And, if you want to go back and renegotiate the deal, well, that's one thing, but being angry about it, and then, feeding it energy, any problem, like every problem needs energy to live. And so if you are sitting there in resentment and anger, and it's like, man, I mean,
Well, and all pain exists in self. So the moment that you're feeling that pain or anguish or frustration or resentment to the other person, you're making it about yourself in that moment. Like you're making it about what you want, what you need, how it's unfair to you, how it's unfair to your bank account. And in the moment that you do that, it's done. Whenever you're feeling the pain, you're focusing on yourself. You're focusing on what you don't have, how you are wronged in the situation, or how you are, the victim.
So so for people who are listening to this, because they legitimize their story, and let's face it, most of our stories are about ourselves. It is you said it earlier, you can either be right or you can be rich, but you can't be both. It's a choice. Take being right, or take, a rich relationship or with your children or, with your spouse or whatever. And so in a divorce situation, how do you kind of stop yourself from getting trapped into your story about, being right or about being self? It's like, well, he's got a new girlfriend or he's done this or he left me or vice versa. Actually, I think women leave more often than men, but I was just goofing around with the stats before this show, and 40 to 50% of all first marriages end in divorce, and 60 to 67 of second marriages end in divorce, which blew me away.
Wow.
And then it goes up to like 70 to 75% for third marriages. So
it's crazy.
So
like
after
the stats
twice,
are so crazy.
maybe stop. I don't know.
There's no 3 times the charm.
There's no three times is a lucky charm. But I don't know. How do you stop that?
I think this comes back to, what do I want more out of this? Is it more important for me to have a larger bank account? Or is it more important for me to have an incredible relationship with my kids, with my ex, so that as we face things down the road, we're doing it united? I mean, and, not to overshare here, but as a family, and that includes, Terri, Neil, Nick, Spencer, you, myself, we've gone through some shit together that would have been extremely difficult had we not been united. At least in terms of, and one of the words that came to mind before when you were listing out some of the things that are super important is, I would say, acceptance. Acceptance in other people's beliefs, acceptance in other people's rules, acceptance in other people's vision on how they think they should parent. We all came from a set of experiences from our parents and their parents and generations before. It's not anyone's fault that they have created these. It's our responsibility, or at least my hallucination is, it's our responsibility to look at it and go, is there another way? If my way was not the only way that we could parent this or get through this situation, could their way work? It might have a different outcome, but is that outcome going to hurt the child or hurt the relationship, or is it just different? And learning some acceptance of, okay, this might not be how I wanted to do it or how I would do it if it was just me and I was a single mom and this is the decision we had to make. But I could also be wrong. And I think there's a stigma in that being wrong, you're less than, or accepting that maybe you've created some stories or maybe this isn't 100% how you see it. You brought up before the book that I had given you, and I still refer to it all the time, is, loving what is, but also questioning that. Is like, is this true? Is this absolutely true? Who am I with this thought, and who would I be without that thought? If anyone going through a tough situation, whether that be a divorce, whether that be co-parenting, whether that be a disagreement, just started to take a deep breath and reflect and go, am I sure that I'm dealing with facts and not emotions and not just my version of this story? Is this actually fact? Did that person come out to hurt me? Did that significant or soon to be ex come out with vengeance to take my money for their own personal use? Or is this just, they hired a lawyer. The lawyer did the best job that they could possibly do. And this is how the cards fell. What was the intent? What are they in their heart? And to your point about creating a vision, what is the ultimate outcome? Would I write the check at a higher amount to have a blissful and incredible relationship down the road? So no matter what we face with our kids, we're good. We're going to be united. We'll get through it no matter what. And the kids will always feel loved and they'll always feel safe and they'll always have the best of both worlds. They might be different, but that actually creates, a really interesting environment for kids to grow up in. I mean, our kids have had, or Spencer for sure has had 4 different parents with all different perspectives. We're not completely aligned in how we would deal with every situation. We all come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, we don't think alike at all. I don't think any of us really don't think alike in regards to like our approach. We all have different approaches. I mean, I wouldn't say we think opposite, but we don't, for sure. And I think, the other, like, was you were saying that it's like, become the kind of person that others want to give to. Like, it's so many people, like, I mean, if you're talking about, is everybody eating? Like, is everybody like, what are we really talking about when money shouldn't get into it. It's like, it reminds me of the story, like when you were talking, it's like, remember when we were at hockey and you looked at me and said, oh my God, like one of the guys we coached against. And you were like, oh my God, he's so hot. I'm like, you think he's hot? And she's like, yeah, I think he's really hot. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to him. And so I go over to him, and it's Neil, who you've been with for how many years have you guys been together?
10 this year.
10 this year. Amazing guy. Like, I love this guy. Anyways, I go up to him and I'm like, hey man, my ex-wife thinks you're hot. And he's like, dude, that's fucking weird. And anyways,
kudos to him for being open-minded.
Oh my God, he was.
He walked into
He walked into a bit of a. Well, he's like, well, we all think there's something going on between the three of you. I think he might have made that comment, but I'm like, no, man, it's like, and he's embraced it, and it's been amazing. But I also will be like, again, it's an example of, you got to get rid of your story. It's like, I could have carried the story around that, well, I don't want, some guy sleeping with my ex-wife or whatever. And, dated a friend of mine at one point in time. And it's like, no, I want her to be happy. That's the story you have to manage. How do you make the other person happy? The first one is all about you. Right. So you've got the 3, I think it's called the 3 dimensions of a relationship. But the first dimension is it's all about you. So it's like, it's really about, you're taking from the relationship. The second one is it's all about equality, which is fine. I'll meet your needs if you meet my needs. But it's a give. Well, it's kind of a give and take. But the problem is it's like being in a business, right? Like you have a customer until they're, a pain in the ass, or they do something that's kind of outrageous or doesn't make sense or unreasonable. Then now all of a sudden you go, okay, well, it's conditional would be the question, because it's on the condition that your needs are getting met, that you'll meet their needs. But the minute they become unreasonable, then you just decide, well, I'm not going to meet your needs anymore. And then the third one is, your needs are my needs and my needs are your needs. And so, that is where we have to aspire to get to in order to be able to create things in a clean way in the relationships.
And your story is what prevents you from getting there. It stands between you and happiness, fulfillment, life.
Yeah. And if your story is about fear or insecurity, right, it's, then that's where it's going to get to. And stories are a series of lousy meanings that you attach to different events, but
it's so easy to get caught in them. And then emotions start running, and then the story builds. And I think that part of it, and one of the things that we did, or at least I can say that I know I consciously did, I believe you consciously did, and Terri, I believe you did as well, was we manage the story by managing the size of circle around us that we would divulge details to. We didn't go around trash talking the other person. We didn't go around telling everybody about all our problems. We didn't go around soliciting advice from just anybody. We were or at least I'll speak for myself. I know that when we've gone through different struggles along the way, as everybody does, and it's been well chosen, educated, sound minds that were also not afraid to call me out on my stuff. I remember when we started to go through some of our troubles, a very dear friend called and she was like, "So you realize you own 50% of this, right?" And it was like a slap in the face that you don't expect. You're like, well, I just wanted a shoulder to cry on. Like, throw me a bone here. Like, I just want to cry a little bit. She's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Like, you own 50% of this. Like, you failed to meet his needs. This is where you're at. So now how are you going to deal with it? What are you going to do? But I think what I see in a lot of people, and especially if they feel like they've been wronged in the situation and they're running a story that's all about how they're the victim, whether that be from a large, settlement or custody payment, whatever that might be, is, they're making it a big story by telling it to a lot of people and soliciting advice. And that advice looks a lot more like cheering them on and telling them they're right than calling them out and saying, you might want to check that assumption that you're making and, look at this from a different perspective. I think that's a really dangerous pitfall that certainly as we've, had a few friends going through some stuff lately, it's a dangerous pitfall that I think a lot of people fall into.
Yeah, I think too, like as you were saying that, and Terri, I would maybe direct this question at you because, when I left, like when we got divorced, I mean, we were still pretty broke. Like we had an enormous amount of debt, like enormous amount of debt. And we really hadn't paid any of it off. And so there was not a lot of equity built up in the business. And so therefore it wasn't like you got a big check. Like
I don't think I ever wanted a big check. Now, I will say I had people saying, you need to get more. That wasn't my goal. I just wanted, I knew you weren't happy. I just wanted it to end. I wanted the pain to end. I don't.
But I think like one of my comments was going to be is like, I think people mistake greed for certainty. And they think people are greedy when really in their core nature, what they are is unbelievably uncertain. Whether it's about a lifestyle that they used to live or all that stuff. We didn't really have a lifestyle. All we did was fucking work. Like it was constant, like 20 hours a day, literally. So there was no lifestyle for us during our marriage, and our marriage wasn't a long marriage anyways. But I mean, I will say like the fact that, this is just a story. It's not advice or anything like that. But the way you handled that whole process made it extremely easy to support you. You didn't, it wasn't like you were vigilant at going after me. And I mean, we literally didn't have anything at that. We were just starting out. And so I don't know. I don't even know if you could have got anything, but you didn't even try. And that made me just want to give more to you. And when the opportunity came up for you to have your own store, it was like, okay, I'm going to make this happen, and it's been reciprocated a million times back. But yeah, I guess we were really kind of able to, like, you were, I mean, amazing at the beginning. Like you didn't like, you didn't fight over anything like that.
But you know what? I think it's my stubborn independentness. Because when I did go back to London, when you own your own business, you don't have the luxury of going on a year maternity leave. And even though I was away from the business, I still needed something for me. So I went back to nursing part-time then. That gave me my certainty, and a little bit of the independence. But you were always gracious with, it sounds so awful giving me money. It's not what I mean, but I don't ever feel there was any conflict there with us.
I've never heard, and I will say that you guys are probably the only couple I can honestly think of that I have never heard money ever brought up. And we've known each other for so long.
But we didn't. Well, so first of all, so when we got divorced, at the time Harold Cunningham was my mentor, and he said, well, whatever you owe her, put a zero behind it. Now, we didn't have, that was not possible because I didn't have it. I would have done it. But I feel like, and I don't remember the exact situation, so I don't want to make it sound here for 1 second that did great things or whatever. It's like I was a shitty husband.
I wish you wouldn't say that, though.
Well, but but I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know any better.
Exactly.
I really didn't know any better. And I just wanted to do the right thing. And I mean, obviously, I think this is not necessarily what I felt at the time, but I think I'll add it in there just for people who are listening, because it's like, I don't want it to be super altruistic sounding, but most men or women who are in this situation don't also want to get taken to the cleaners, right? So they're kind of protective. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's like, if you believe in abundance, then you give more. And just through the law of reciprocity and the universe, it comes back to you. And,
tenfold.
Yeah. And that's how we've kind of always tried to operate.
And it's not supposed to be easy. I think there's this misconception that being vulnerable or coming forward or not being protective and putting yourself out there is oh, well, if it was the right thing to do, it would feel a lot easier. It's never going to feel easy.
That's a very good point.
It's always going to feel difficult. It's always going to feel uncomfortable and awkward, and you do it anyways.
What were the most uncertain times for you in that? Do you remember what the toughest or most uncertain times were?
During the divorce?
During the divorce and the subsequent maybe few years, because I feel like that would be good information for not only some, for both parties to hear that.
I don't know if this is answering your question, but you have to learn not to judge the other person. We were literally 50-50. I think we did an outstanding job with that. My 50% of the time, Spencer was my world. That's not to say he wasn't yours. I looked at you because you did things different than I did. And I now know that's okay. Back then, to answer your question, I think I struggled with it a little bit because the 50% that you had him, you would get babysitters or whatever. And but that's not for who am I to judge? But I think that I don't think there was a lot of other. I don't recall. Have I?
You raised a really good point, which is in the co-parenting of a child. Everybody has their own way of parenting, and you don't have the control. So it's an interesting point. I've never thought about it this way, but especially when the other person isn't, like in our situation where okay, we'll get a babysitter and I'll go out, and it's, you don't have that control, which you would have that control if you had maintained a marriage together.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. You'd just be like, well, we're not going out.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point, actually.
And many people, many people, it rubs them the wrong way. And you just, when you're in that situation, you really don't have a say, really. If the child's not in detriment, I don't know. That's my personal belief.
And I think a lot of people compare lives. They go, okay, well, what did they do with them? Oh, they took them to a cottage and they got to go boating, or they got to do this, or they got to do that. And all we did was go to the movies. It's like, but I think one of the one of the many lessons that Spencer has, kind of taught us is I think he enjoyed the movies as much as he ever enjoyed any
Oh, absolutely.
trip
Probably more.
anywhere. And
Yeah.
in most cases, probably more. Like it's what he craved most. So I think when you look at people are comparing like, oh, I got to buy them this toy, or I got to top Christmas more than they did, or I've got to do this to better them. It's not, it can't be a scoreboard. And I think a lot of people that I've seen go through this make it a scoreboard or make themselves feel less than because they can't provide those things. And then that builds that resentment, whether it's intentional or not. You start to go, well, I can't do that. I can't buy them this. I can't, have 100 gifts at Christmas. Like I can't make it like that. It's just not the situation I'm in. And they make themselves wrong or build resentment for the other person that they have that lifestyle and they're missing out.
How much do you think the book Loving What Is would help in this, like in this topic with families or people who are?
I think it's critical. I can't think of another book that I would recommend more. I mean, there's other books on other subjects that we've obviously talked about today, but in terms of a book that is so universal in its message, and it can be used in relationships, in co-parenting, in business, in anything. It's just a book that questions your assumptions and makes you take a different look at how you're processing your thoughts. And at the end of the day, whatever thoughts we have, whatever story we're telling ourselves is going to build that emotion. And that's how we're going to play out our life. And that affects everything around us. Our significant other, our friends, our kids, our parents, our siblings. It's our whole world.
Was there anything that you read back in the day when?
Not that,
That would
not,
be-
not
that's not that
from a,
stands
no,
out?
not that
Yeah.
I've done so much. Brene Brown, Matthew Hussey, Tony Robbins. Yeah.
Alison Armstrong's also another one for any female listeners in terms of understanding the male psychology and just the nature of the masculine energy and how to communicate and things like that. I mean, she has Keys to the Kingdom, Queen's Code. She's got a lot of good books there too.
Mhm. And then Armstrong.
Sorry, yes, Alison Armstrong.
Alison Armstrong.
Sorry.
Sorry, did
Yeah,
I?
that is
Sorry, that's the one.
Alison's
And
Armstrong.
then Perez.
Esther Perez.
Esther Perez.
Mating in Captivity.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's like if probably as a result of the divorce, it made me get serious about. It made me refocus and go, okay, because I do remember this. I remember going, am I going to be like a 50-50 parent here? Or am I going to be the richest guy in the grave type of, not that I would have been, and I remember, that's when I sold my whole Scarborough business. And so, it was a choice to kind of calibrate. And I think actually, some of this conversation has made me realize it's like, we focus on the topic of the divorce and the problems with the parenting and all this stuff, but what's it giving you? What have you learned from it? How have you grown as an individual? And really, like we talked about earlier, like we have a 5 million year old brain, and it is sitting there, to identify every problem or every risk or every, area where we could get hurt. But it doesn't, it's not optimal at really kind of, replaying the positive, the lessons, where we've grown, how we've grown. Like I wouldn't even be remotely the same person had I stayed even in the relationship for another 5-10 years, which a lot of people do. A lot of people will stay in the relationship till the kids get out of school. And it's like, well, who do you become then?
Yeah.
Versus who could you have become?
Yes.
And who are you as a result of the divorce and looking at your business in a different way, and or where are the opportunities to grow? Like there's so many things that can be a positive I think, the other thing too is like, I'm a way better parent than I would have been.
I
I
have
would
to
have
agree.
been,
Yeah.
I would have been probably not a shitty parent, but
I just think you would have been more, you're a great male influence. I just think you would have been more absent. Yeah.
100% I would
And
have.
I think Spencer's very lucky to have that masculine um, figure. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, but I do know there's 100% certainty I would have been an absentee parent. I would have put my energy into the business, and that would have been, I would have lost out so much from that, because, I think I do personally believe our children are our biggest teachers, and what I've learned along the way about myself, and the the amazing opportunities that I have to grow and learn.
But and vice versa. Like you just said those stats. The likeliness is if you have more than one kid, one of them is going to get divorced. One of them is going to go through this. One of them might have to co-parent. What is the example that they're going to remember? I would have zero fear, not that I would ever want him to go through it. I would have zero apprehension, zero fear that Spencer would be able to co-parent and have a beautiful relationship, even if he went through a divorce. It's not what I want for him, but he's grown up in such a loving environment and he's seen only the best of it.
And if at minimum you didn't have a reciprocating partner, at least you can move forward with integrity. And that at the end of the day is like, I'm thinking of a friend actually, and it's like, he's got such high integrity, and it's like, well, what would you rather have? Like an extra $1 million in the bank, or people around you look at you and go, that guy's got lots, like his integrity is beyond reproach. And I'd rather have the integrity. So, guys, this has been a great conversation. I don't know if if I've, missed anything. Not that I really had a plan for this conversation, actually. I think it was like 2 minutes before we came down here. I said, okay, what are we going to talk about anyways? But I think, thank you for coming, Terri, like it's, thanks for being easy on me here, guys. But I think, listen, I do think, I do want to say this in that, when you own your own business, and this is just my frame, so I'm sharing my story, but you can get absorbed in, your commitment to it, and it becomes part of you. And sometimes you don't know where it begins or ends. And as a result, things get cloudy. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're in that cloud, I hope that this has been useful for you, whether you're male or female. And that, we're always here if you need any help or any support, any resources, we're happy to help with that. But I think that if you're not good in your relationships, there's nothing's good. And this kind of this is where, when I talk about, the three core pieces of time, energy, and focus. And I always say that energy and focus are more important than time, because time is finite, right? So there's only an hour, it's an hour. But I can control where my energy and my focus go towards that hour. And these are the things that really hurt in life and in stages of life. And they don't have to. They can be a joyful learning experience, because, like we said, and I don't want this to be glossed over, like, we have not always been able to sit in this room and have this type of conversation. We've grown through this. We didn't start like this. We had to grow. We had to, live through the experiences and everything that we've talked about, today, masculine, feminine energy, story, meaning, and everything else, all the questions and the books and the readings, the work was put in. And I would challenge you, even if you don't have a problem or a perceived problem in your relationship, when's the last time you picked up a book or a resource to grow in that area, and potentially solve the problem before it becomes real? This conversation, like listening to the two of you guys go back and forth, has been awesome for me. But I think it's going to be awesome for a whole bunch of other people listening to it, because it's going to give a perspective. And hopefully maybe for some people, it just lends to, an example of what is possible. Because when you understand what's possible, the future looks brighter. And, like the year Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, like I think 13 or 16 people that year broke it because they could see what is possible. And, you two have done that, and you've been a bigger part of it than I have been. I know, like, for sure. I'm the most fortunate guy in the world that I have two beautiful, strong women, in my corner. And I want to just thank you guys so much for this. I want to thank you for sharing. And I really appreciate it. I love you both.
Love you. Love you.
One I will be slipping in between the sheets with tonight. The other one I won't. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for being so open, because this is not common. So love you. Love you.
Love you.
God bless everybody. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this was rewarding and insightful, and you learned something. Anyways, thanks guys. Appreciate you listening. And we will let's go have a drink.